I've been playing video games pretty much since I can remember, and one of the most influential games I have ever played in my life is the original Final Fantasy VII. So naturally, I was super excited to play Final Fantasy VII Remake and now Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And while I have a lot of thoughts on Remake, it's been a long time since I've played it, but I did just finish Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and I have so many thoughts. So spoiler, there will be spoilers for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth in this video. If you haven't played it yet and you don't want to be spoiled, then don't watch this video. I'm not going to hold anything back plot-wise, story-wise, scene-wise. I have decided to come up with my top 5 things that I really enjoyed and the top 5 things I really did not enjoy about Rebirth. I put over 100 hours into Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I would not have put 100+ hours into that game if I didn't enjoy it. It was a lot harder for me to come up with 5 things that I really, really enjoyed than it was for me to come up with 5 things that I really, really didn't enjoy, because there were so many good things about it. Overall, I loved it. I thought it was great. It's wonderful to revisit the world that I love so much from the Final Fantasy original game and see it in great graphics and with upgraded music and all that stuff. So with that being said, this is Susie Grace's opinions on the top 5 best things about the game and the top 5 worst things about the game. So take that for what it's worth. So I did try to put these in order from number 5 down to number 1, but they're all pretty close. So just keep that in mind. So number 5 is the story. I feel like they took some scenes that were kind of confusing in the original due to it being heavily text-based, mostly text-based, and they were really able to make some things come together and connect better. For instance, when your party shows up in Nibelheim and Cloud walks into the inn where he and Zack stayed, and he has this sudden flashback of Zack talking to him about Aerith, who he didn't know was Aerith at the time. It was just a really nice little tiny scene that really helped bring the story together. I probably played through the original game 2 or 3 times before I ever realized who Zack was and like what connection he had with any of the story. I just knew that there was some spiky-haired kid, black spiky-haired kid, and I had no idea who he was. So I really appreciated little tiny details like that. The whole storyline with Barrett and Corel and Dyne and Kate Sith's backstabbing and just how dejected he looked when he, gave the keystone over to Tsung. And it just came through so much better than just the text coming across the screen. And I just thought they did a really good job. For the most part, I thought they did a pretty good job of staying close to the original story. Sure, they kind of added some things here and there, but they just helped it make more sense. Like the fact that Cloud and his party are now chasing the robed men. That makes so much more sense. In the original, yeah, he's chasing after Sephiroth, but I don't know. It just helped that in every area you go, you see the robed men and they kind of help lead you along. With the original, it was a little more like, well, where do we go? Oh, well, here's the next place on the map. So this must be where we go now because we can't really go anywhere else. But with chasing the robed men, it just kind of helped make a little bit more sense, and it gave kind of this direction for us to go. And I just really appreciated that. I thought that worked really, really well. Number 4 is graphics. Overall, the game was absolutely stunning. I could not believe, I didn't think it could get any better than Remake. And yet it was so much better than Remake. The textures of people's skin, of people's hair, their eyes, their emotions, the graphics of just the areas you go, the creatures, the battle, the fighting and combat was so much fun. It was so smooth to transition from person to person, from party member to party member. And there were so many times where I was switching back and forth really fast because I accidentally switched to the wrong person. And it was so smooth. There were never any glitches. It never felt choppy to me. I really loved being able to make a member of my party do either a limit or a synergy ability and then switch to another member and watch that limit and synergy ability from afar, because it was just astounding to me that all these things could be happening at once. And sometimes I couldn't even tell what was going on because there was so much that was happening, and yet it was all so smooth. props to the PS5 hardware because it was so smooth. The summons were amazing. They looked really, really incredible. All the areas that you go, all the open world areas and everything, it was just absolutely, it was like eye candy, all of it. Everybody was beautiful. Everybody looked amazing. All the surrounding areas looked amazing, even when they were supposed to look kind of crappy or like dilapidated or run down. Everything just looked so crisp and it was just stunning. It was beautiful. It's a beautiful game. Number 3 is probably going to be piano, playing piano in a game, and we'll get to this in my next 5, in a game that is riddled with mini games that are mostly pointless. The piano was a total breath of fresh air. I loved sitting Cloud down with his giant sword on his back and playing the most wonderful piano arrangements of all my favorite songs. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I won't say it was relaxing because some of those songs were really challenging, but it was just a nice change of pace and it was something I enjoyed doing, and it was totally optional. You didn't have to do it if you didn't want to, which can't be said about other mini games that were pointless, that weren't optional. And I loved it. I thought playing the piano was great. It was just a really lovely addition. And then the fact that they added the piano into some side quests, like one of my personal favorite side quests was when Tifa plays Aerith's theme, and there were a lot of music, there were a lot of memories wrapped up in that one. That was a really, really lovely moment. I just thought it was great. Number 2 is Jenova. What Square Enix did with Jenova's design, her music, her feel, the ambiance, everything regarding Jenova was perfection. I thought she was absolutely incredible. Her music was phenomenal. I didn't think it could get any better than it did in Remake, or than even in the original, that classic music that we all know and love. It was just absolutely astounding. And her design and the way that she kind of comes together, and like, I barely even have words because she was so much fun, even though she was absolutely disgusting and terrifying. Absolutely horrifying. Would never want to face something like that in a million years. But she was easily one of the coolest boss designs I've ever come across in a game. And I don't play games like that very often. I don't play games like Bloodborne or Elden Ring or Dark Souls or whatever. And maybe Elden Ring doesn't even fit in that. I'm not really sure. But that just kind of have these wackadoo, kind of weird, bizarre creatures that don't really make any sense. I don't play games like that very often. So I was really surprised when Final Fantasy VII Rebirth kind of took this weird Resident Evil kind of turn. But it was great because it wasn't gross and creepy enough to like really freak me out, but it was gross and creepy enough to be like, wow, Hojo is absolutely out of his mind, and he is a sick, crazy man. And the fact that he's delighting in all this stuff is so crazy to me. But Jenova was like top tier Resident Evil kind of for me. She was so creepy, but she was fascinating. What they had done with her and how to create that shell behind her with all the hands on one side. And it was just, both times you run into her in Rebirth, I just could not believe what I was seeing. It was so exciting, but it was also really terrifying. She was a nightmare, absolute nightmare fuel, but I was totally here for it because I thought she looked amazing, but gross, creepy amazing. And my number 1 favorite thing about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has to be the music. The soundtrack was out of this world. I have always had such respect for composers and people who think in music. I can't do that. I remember being absolutely obsessed with the remake soundtrack and just being so just enamored with how they took these songs that I grew up listening to, playing this game over and over and over again in their little MIDI forms, and turning them into these beautiful orchestral pieces. I actually had the opportunity to take my 9-year-old daughter with me to go see the Final Fantasy VII Remake orchestral world tour. And it was a dream come true. Here I was sitting in this auditorium listening to a full orchestra play the music from my childhood. It was a dream. It was amazing. And I thought the music was great then. And then we got Rebirth and everything. It's like they turned it up to 11 again. Some of my favorite music was probably Genova's themes, Aerith's theme that they play at the end, and I really, really loved the boss theme for Guy Natak in the Guy Cave with Red 13. That boss kicked my butt pretty hard, but his music was absolutely phenomenal. I loved it. It was so great. Everything was unique, and yet I never thought I could hear the Cosmo Canyon or the Overworld theme turned into like a Western theme. Totally blew my mind. It was amazing. And I now have the opportunity for Mother's Day. My present was tickets to go see Final Fantasy VII Rebirth in concert with my 9-year-old this August. So I'm really excited about that. But I just thought the music was the crown jewel. I've heard some people say that Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth are $70 game soundtracks with a free game that comes with it. And that's really kind of what it feels like, because the soundtracks were just absolutely phenomenal. I loved every piece of music. I thought it was just amazing. And props to the composers, because I just think they're absolute masterminds. I don't know what it's like to think in music like that. Okay. Those are my top 5 things that I loved. It was a lot harder coming up with the top 5 things that I loved, because there were so many things that I did love. The top 5 things I did not love were pretty easy, because they are so unbelievably obnoxious. So without further ado, number 5, the mini games. There were so many mini games, and most of them were completely pointless, and most of them were not optional. And I had such a problem with that. I have played many games that have had little mini games in them that have not been obnoxious. But the fact that when you go to the Gold Saucer, you have to play every single mini game just to continue the story made me want to chuck my controller. I don't want to do this. I'm not playing this game for the mini games. I'm playing this game because I want to continue the story and I want to actually experience the story. Don't make me run around this gigantic place and punch Dio in the face as a pixelated polygon so I can continue the story. You don't even have to do that in the original. All you have to do in the original is the battle square and the chocobo races. That's it. But everywhere you go, there's always a mini game, and it's never optional, and you always have to do something stupid. I didn't even try Gears and Gambits because I was like, nope, absolutely not. I know I'm gonna hate that. I've hated all the other ones. I know I'm gonna hate that. So many mini games. And I know I'm not the only person who feels this way. There's a lot of hate for the mini games out there. Number 4, Zack's timeline. What the heck? I don't understand. What? The beginning of Rebirth is you're suddenly Zack? Make it make sense. That doesn't make any sense. And what I saw when I watched those scenes was just missed potential. I just saw a waste of resources. I was like, all right, cool. So here we have this amazing game with this amazing story, and you're gonna waste my time on these scenes that make no sense with Zack in Sector 5 with people who aren't even supposed to be alive? And Aerith and Cloud, it doesn't make any sense. Not to mention, there was the spoiler of Marlene going, Aerith's gonna die if Cloud doesn't get better. Everything about the Zack timeline made me want to scream. I didn't understand it. It didn't make any sense. I don't understand why it was there. Whatever. That's all I'll say about that. The Zack timeline drove me crazy. Number 3, Aerith's death. Don't get me wrong. I cried. I cried many times in Rebirth. Watching these things play out with updated graphics, with real looking people, with unbelievable soundtracks was really moving to me multiple times. I can think of quite a few times that I cried while I was playing the game, and Aerith's death was one of them. I wasn't sure if it was actually gonna happen. There were lots of rumors going around about whether or not they were actually gonna change the fate and what the Whispers were doing. We don't know. She even talks about it herself. We can change our future. I didn't appreciate it because in the original, part of the reason it is so heartbreakingly sad is because it just comes out of nowhere. And there is no time to say goodbye. There's no time to talk to her. There's no time to ask what she's doing. How's she gonna make it? Is she gonna be okay? I was very, very moved when Cloud cradles her in his arms and cries over her. I was very moved by that. One of the saddest things when characters in movies or books or anything, when they die, it's the people they leave behind. And it's the reactions of those that they leave behind. And that was heartbreaking to me. It was so sad. But I didn't appreciate the fact that she somehow opened her eyes at the end, and then she was there, but only Cloud could see her, and nobody else could see her. So he didn't even seem affected by the fact that she was no longer with them. And I just felt like that was very odd. And I'm not saying that Aerith's death wasn't sad, because it was. I cried. It was so sad. And her music was so angelic and beautiful, and it had a choir, and I was fighting Jenova through tears, and it was so heartbreakingly sad. And I knew it was probably coming, and I still cried. But ultimately, I really was disappointed in the fact that they had this kind of like these moments where Cloud was able to talk to her and he was only seeing her. And once again, this is Susie Grace's opinion, but I felt like that took away, like he did shed tears when he cradled her in his arms, but then after that, he seemed fine, even though she's not even with them anymore. And that just didn't sit well with me. I don't really know. It just didn't. I'm not going to say they ruined the scene, but I feel like it could have been done better. I don't know. Okay, number 2, the whole final battle sequences after Jenova, I thought were garbage. They made 0 sense. Jenova was amazing. I thought Jenova was great. I loved her music. I loved the fight. It was super epic. I don't love that you had to break up into parties, kind of. The fact that I was fighting Bahamut with Kate Sith was a joke. I don't understand how that was ever supposed to work. I somehow did it, but I was really, really irritated about that. It was just this slog of just battle after battle after battle after battle after battle. And then they decide to bring back the character who you think is dead to fight what is easily one of the hardest final boss battles I've ever experienced in a game, who is one of the slowest characters out of your entire party. I love Aerith, but she's slow. Her attacks are slow and her movement is slow. I felt as an original player that I got totally thrown under the bus, because before I went into that whole end final battle, I sat down on that bench and I changed all my materia up on all my people, and I took most of Aerith's materia away. And I know I'm not alone on this either, because I thought they're gonna kill her. So to bring her back for the final battle against Sephiroth in a battle that shouldn't have even happened in the first place, because we shouldn't have even fought Sephiroth at all in either Remake or Rebirth, I thought was extremely unfair. And then the fact that once you realize your mistake, you don't get to change her gear, you don't get to change her materia, you don't get to go back into the menu at all, unless you go all the way back to the fight with Cloud and Zack fighting Sephiroth together for unknown reasons. When earlier during the Musclehead Coliseum, they did allow you to access the menu right before you fought Rufus. In case you didn't notice, there's a teeny little square that shows up in the bottom left corner that says menu. And when you click and hold that, after the cutscene ends, you are able to go into your menu and you're able to switch up all your stuff. They don't allow you to do that with Aerith, which again, I felt was really, really unfair, because they knew that the original players were going to take all her materia away, and they punished us for it. I felt like they'd shoved me down in the dirt, kicked me, and spit on me. And I was really, really irritated. I'm not even saying that the final battle was too hard. What I'm saying is they should have given us an opportunity to go into the menu and fix things when we were struggling, just like they did with Rufus. The fact that they gave that to us for Rufus, but they didn't give it to us for the end of the game when it really, really mattered, was really, really unfair. A final boss should absolutely be hard, should be challenging, and it should make you sit on the edge of your seat and feel absolutely euphoric after you finish it. I play on normal because I like to enjoy games. I don't play on hard mode, but I felt like they just were like, nah, it's too bad. You're just gonna have to play this on hard mode because we want you to play on hard mode. If I wanted hard mode, I would have chosen hard mode. I'm a stay-at-home mom with 2 little kids. I don't have hours and hours and hours to throw myself at boss fights that take try after try after try after try after try. Do I want to struggle a little bit? Yeah, a boss fight, you should struggle a little bit. Do I want to feel like I'm drowning and cannot beat the end of a game that I just put 100+ hours into? No, I don't want to feel that way. I want to enjoy it. I don't want to struggle through it. Included in this final battle sequence is the Bizarro Sephiroth, which also made me angry. What do we have to look forward to at the end of the game? Pray tell. What do we have? They're slowly whittling down all the amazing, just insane battles that we were all so stoked for down in that crater at the very end of the game. What do we have now? Jenova, okay. But like, what else do we have? That's all I'm gonna say about the final battle sequence because it segues into my #1 biggest issue with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and that is Sephiroth. He is too present. He shows up all the time. He's always around. And the fact that we have to fight him at the end of Rebirth, just like we had to fight him at the end of Remake, makes literally 0 sense. They have taken what was one of the most powerful moments at the very, very end of the game, and they have now done it 2 times, at the end of Remake and at the end of Rebirth. Why couldn't they just have Jenova be the final boss? Why couldn't they do that? I don't understand. And it's because, I can almost guarantee, it's because they had to put one winged angel in there, didn't they? They just couldn't control themselves. They had to stick one winged angel in there. And as much as we all love that song, that whole fight with Sephiroth was so stupid. And Sephiroth sounds bored. He never sounds scary. He never sounds crazy. He never sounds like everything in the original game you find with Sephiroth is after he has done something horrifying. When you find the snake that's impaled, don't get me wrong, that was really cool to watch that happen in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. But it was creepier when you just come across it in the original and you're like, okay, Sephiroth did that. And then in the Shinra building, when you are locked away in all your little rooms, and then Jenova gets out and you have to follow a blood trail up to the president's office, and then there's a sword in the dead president as he's laying on his desk. Everything about Sephiroth was scary because he never showed his face. He was rarely ever around. And then he finally shows his face and he kills Aerith. Boom, terrifying. He was so scary. And at the very end of the game, we're like, oh my gosh, okay, it's time for us to go and actually face Sephiroth. But now, the heck am I supposed to be scared of? He's around all the freaking time and he sounds so bored. Doesn't sound like he's invested in anything at all. I'm Susie Grace. Thank you for coming to my Final Fantasy VII Rebirth TED Talk. Overall, I thought the game was amazing. I loved it. I put 100+ hours into it, and I wouldn't have done that if I didn't enjoy it. There were so many things I loved about it, but those 5 things that I didn't like, they stuck out like sore thumbs. Ultimately, if you like the original Final Fantasy, I do think it is absolutely worth playing both Rebirth and Remake, and probably the 3rd installment. The 3rd installment will be even better, I'm sure. There are many of you that are going to disagree with me on a lot of these things, I'm sure. And that's okay. We don't have to share the same opinions. I enjoyed the game for the most part. I'm really happy I played it. I will play the 3rd installment. Absolutely 100%. But I'm probably gonna play it on easy.